So, now I'm well and Cody's sick.
Yes. How the turns have tabled.
Oh, the tables. They have done their turns.
And I'm on the
have
other
done
side of
their
the table
tabling.
this time.
That's
like,
true.
Literally.
So normally in Least Haunted headquarters, we tend to sit in the same place, but I did some rearranging and then suddenly improvised the setup, and Cody's on the other side. It feels like a whole different podcast.
It almost is because it's not.
Speaking of which, here comes the intro. For anybody who knows the calendar dates and what we tend to do around now, you won't be too surprised.
Come. No!
Yes, it's another Crushing It. Welcome, one and all. If this is your first time ever listening to the Least Haunted podcast,
You're confused.
you don't listen to this one. Listen to some other episode. What episode would you recommend people who are listening for the first time listen to instead of this, Cody?
Put me on the spot.
What's your favorite episode we've ever done?
Oh man, we've done 101. That's a lot to think about.
That last Yeti one was pretty solid. I mean, we built up to that.
You
Not
mean
the Yeti
Bigfoot?
one. I always call him Yeti.
Bigfoot?
Yeah, Bigfoot. Bigfoot. That was a good one.
That was a good one. Yeah, you listened to Bigfoot. Although that's also 100th episode, so it's a culmination of a bunch of other stuff. So there's references and things in that too.
I guess it's hard to get into this show. Everything's referencing. No, let's see.
You know that might actually be our problem. We don't have that like wide.
Let's do a
appeal.
wide. All right, so
in honor of that,
in honor of a wide embrace, we're going to do a review of a singular episode from 1992.
Yeah. So if you don't remember the original conceit of Crushing It, it was that
I don't remember. And it was my idea.
Why am I not surprised? That we were hired by Paramount to do a Dr. Crusher appreciation podcast in preparation for their upcoming new show that was just going to be called Star Trek: Crusher.
Yeah.
Hence the Crushing It. Really, though, it was just because we wanted to talk about the episode of Star Trek where Dr. Crusher bangs a ghost.
Well, and I think we already hit the bottom of the barrel because we've already reviewed all the Crusher-centric episodes. She's not even in this one very much.
She is.
There are one or two more Crusher-centric episodes we haven't delved into yet.
But do they tie into like the paranormal?
Not necessarily, and this does.
Yes.
So this counts as a Least Haunted episode, kind of. But welcome, everybody, to Crushing It. We're going to review the episode Schisms. So
season 6, episode 5.
Yeah. So if you might find it to be a more enriching experience to go watch the episode before you hear us review it.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you kind of remember the episode, we will jog your memories and you can fill in the blanks with your imagination.
What if it's someone who's never watched Star Trek?
I'm sure. I mean, we have.
And then we tell them, go watch this episode from the 5th season.
Like I love to say, we have tens of dozens of listeners, Cody. And I'm sure there's a couple who have never seen Star Trek but enjoy this. They're out there. Hey, everybody.
I used to listen to podcasts and watch movie reviews to films I had never seen just because I enjoyed listening to the people tell me about it.
There you go.
So,
these are the same people who would listen to us talk about actually anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people who pay for Polterbites.
We could make up what happened in the episode and they wouldn't even know.
That was originally my idea if it was going to happen. Real talk.
That's a good idea.
Because last year, so
we make up a Star Trek episode.
This is the 4th time we've done Crushing It. This is the 4th time.
This is our April Fool's episode.
Yeah, it's April Fool's thing. A tradition we do. The first time was Sub Rosa. The second time was when what's the name of the episode?
Remember Me?
No, it was the one where they don't get the REM sleep, which is there's a callback.
Night Terrors.
Night Terrors. And then last time we acted like we were going to talk about a Dr. Crusher episode, and then that turned to be a double fake out, and instead we talked about hot-headed naked ice boars.
That's true. So we actually haven't done Crushing It in 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Not for real.
So we better jump in because, boy, I've got all kinds of hot takes on
we're
this
probably
one.
losing people's attention.
Yeah. We should stop talking about things without doing the things.
Yeah. I think people like to be teased, though.
Do they?
Some people pay good money for it.
They do. So any minute now we're going to start talking about this episode, but not quite yet. First, I'm going to talk about... Actually, we don't have any sponsors, so let's talk about the episode.
Okay.
So we open with... What? How does it start?
Okay.
So Cody and I watched this yesterday.
I watched
afternoon.
it again last night.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we open up with a captain's log. Captain's log. And he tells you the star date. I remember it's something .2. And and they are exploring the what was the name of it?
Oh, it was a nebula.
It was a globular cluster, but it was the
Amagrosa diaspora.
Yeah.
A globular cluster. I have memory alpha right here.
I had notes, handwritten notes.
An unusually dense globular cluster, named after the Amagrosa Desert and pet finch of the episode writer Braga's mother. Okay.
So the Amagrosa Desert, real quick, fun fact, is on the border of Nevada and California. It's on the Nevada side, and it is just northeast of Death Valley. It's named after the Amagrosa River. It's a river that's not always flowing, and sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, depending on seasons, and it translates to, I think it's bitter tasting. It's because the Spanish explorers, like, this river tastes like shit, and it's because it was alkali, because it's coming through, alkali flats.
Oh, okay.
But it's noteworthy for being the only place in the world where you can find the Amagrosa pupfish. It is a little fish that is endemic to Death Valley and the Amagrosa Desert, basically.
Did you know all this before the episode, or did you just learn this?
Yes,
that's
no.
amazing.
because I knew about
I
knew about the pupfish because there's also a Death Valley pupfish. So I knew there were pupfish in the desert, which is really interesting. But I'd forgotten that was specifically where they came from. So then I was like, oh, Amagrosa Desert. I want to know about that. And I clicked on it. And then I was like, oh, yeah.
So Riker is tossing and turning in bed in his super sparkly future sheets. Do you remember? I always felt like those looked very uncomfortable.
Well,
the bed sheets.
He actually, I think, is sleeping above the sheets. But he has that crushed velvet blue thing that he wears.
Yeah, he's wearing like a velvet robe, sleeping robe.
And but it's the pillow. You can see the pillow under the pillowcase, and the pillow itself is made out of a shimmery.
The pillow sticking out of the end of the pillowcase.
Opalescent material, which was very popular in the 1990s. I don't know if people remember.
It's very early 90s future looking.
Yeah.
As is this whole show, but especially their bed sheets.
Yeah, I was telling Garth, like, dude, in the 90s, I remember there was a time where there was this aesthetic where everybody liked the oily sheen.
Yes, the oily
see in puddles, like that prismatic color. It's like we were both horrified by oil spills at the time, but also strangely fascinated by the beauty of it.
This is the early 90s. Shimmery times.
Yeah, shimmery fabric. So his pillow is made out of that.
He wakes up and staggers he can't sleep. He staggers into his bathroom. Rare time we see a bathroom.
Yes.
And he puts his hand under the sink and washes his face and stares at himself in the reflection. And Cody and I were noticing, well, we never do see a toilet in Star Trek. We always assume they transport poop out of their
That was
butts.
always my assumption.
But, boy, that basin that he gets his water out of has sitting water in it all the time. And it's pretty low in the front.
Yeah, so he goes
He could Riker maneuver himself right up there pretty easily. It might be a bidet/sink is what I'm thinking.
I think it's a one and done.
It's a one and done. Yeah, that's
basin.
the future, man.
The future.
Yeah. They're looking at museums and like old-fashioned things like, oh, they use different basins for different things.
That's pretty wasteful.
Yeah. It's like the Victorians having all kinds of different forks for different kinds of food. It's crazy.
Space is limited on a Galaxy class ship.
It really is.
I mean, you got to save all that space for the kindergartens and and the lizard. Isn't there like a lizard terrarium?
The ship is so much bigger than it needs to be for 1,000 people.
Yeah,
it's huge. I've seen breakdowns, and like you could fit everybody into like a tenth of the ship.
I think it's 1,016 people.
It's mostly an incredibly empty ship. If you walk the hallways, you'll never see anyone unless you're in certain decks.
Weird shit happens there. It's spooky.
Yeah,
it's fucking spooky.
Very
ship.
spooky. That's why we're talking about this on the Least Haunted podcast. Jada and Doherty, Geordi and Data are working on charting star clusters, and they start talking about modifying the sensor array, and Riker hasn't slept, and he's basically just nodding like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
He shows up, apologizes for being late. He comments that he's overslept again.
His hair is all tousled.
Yeah, but this means it's already happened a few times, and I bring that up because there's a timeline issue that I've run into. He says... It'll become clear as we go through the episode when we get to like what's really going on. But he says, "Yeah, I overslept again." Then they tell him that they are going to experiment boosting their sensors' ability
yes,
by channeling warp energy through the main deflector array
Which
by
is,
passing it through a conduit in a specific cargo hold.
Yeah, and the main deflector array, if I'm not mistaken, is the little red mouth on the front of the ship, of the front of the bottom hull of the ship, not the saucer section, but that big red part. And so they're funneling it through a cargo bay that's way up in the neck of the ship. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever happens, they need to have an anomaly in Cargo Bay 4 later on in the episode, so that's why they're redirecting it through
and then Data informs Riker that if this is successful, it will boost the effectiveness of their sensors and their scanners by 25%.
When it works, Geordi immediately names it after himself. He says it's the LaForge sensor array now.
Well, we're getting way ahead of ourselves there.
It doesn't matter. Anyway.
Spoilers, it's 26%.
Oh, no. You ruined it, Cody. Now the dramatic tension of our recounting of this episode is ruined.
Dude, we haven't even gotten through the cold open yet. This is still the cold open of the episode.
This is going to be a 3-hour lease time.
Oh, God.
Poor Cody. He's been so sick from the cold that I gave him, and you're doing a great job with your throat, by the way. I was coughing and hacking at this point when we did the last episode.
I'm also out of sorts because I'm not bullshitting you. I had handwritten, for the only time ever, I didn't do it in my computer. I had handwritten notes on
I remember.
a notepad.
You were diligently taking notes the whole time we watched the episode.
So I'm having to pull all this out of memory.
You're doing a great job. So they modify the sensor array, and then Data asks Riker if he's gonna. Will you don't forget to attend my poetry reading? Oh yeah, Riker's like, yeah, okay.
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Yeah,
not a chance.
Nope, didn't happen.
Cut to Data's reading. One of my favorite scenes in all of Star Trek is Data's poetry.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Data's? Are you a fan? Because we're led to believe that his poetry is awful, but I love it.
Yeah, well, so first of all, he's sitting in one of the many, it's a big ship, right? We already said there's a lot of space. So
they have 10 forward, yeah.
They have designated rooms for just
this is the poetry
recitals
room.
And salons and whatnot. But it is close to 10 forward, I could tell, because it's at the front of the ship, because the wall opposite where Data's sitting is curved and has windows. Implying that it's at the front of the saucer, like 10 forward.
I mean, you'd have a curve and windows on any part of the saucer, but
it's the angle.
But if the stars are moving at the angle, it looks like you're going forward.
It's the angle of the curve.
The angle of the curve. It's all about the angle of the curve. Yes.
Anyway, he's sitting there in a high chair with his arms just hanging limply down below.
It's very, very strange.
Like a doll on a shelf.
Yeah, like a marionette or a ventriloquist dummy.
Like his Pinocchio analogy that is Data. And we drop in the middle, at the end of him reciting a sonnet, I believe, that he is... he's talking about a friend and him watching the setting sun over a sea on an alien planet. But he is describing it in... poetic language. It is poetic if your poetic language is all based on science.
Yeah, the poetry of a robot through technical terms and gases.
He's Chat GPT.
Yeah.
He's straight up. That's all I can think is I'm like, oh, so it's like somebody asks Chat GPT, hey, write me a poem about this. Meanwhile, the audience is, I mean, not us, but the audience in the show, in this room, all look very bored. They're rolling their eyes.
They're trying to be polite, but just kind of fidgety.
I also noticed that there's like a few security officers seemingly standing behind everyone. And all I could think of was like, according to legend, the Roman Emperor Nero forced people to listen to him play music.
Oh.
And if they tried to leave, there were armed guards who would keep them there, if not just kill them for trying to leave.
Wow.
And I'm like,
just like that.
Yeah, like, why do we have security? Is this performance so bad? But anyway, then he moves on to what is probably...
An ode to Spot.
Ode to Spot.
Yeah. Felis catus.
Your nomenclature.
Is your taxonomic nomenclature an endothermic quadruped carnivorous by nature?
Nice.
And then it keeps going. I don't remember the rest of it.
I have to say, actually, yeah, no, I really was impressed with Data's ode to Spot because it is very clever, as Geordi says later.
Yeah.
It has a rhyming scheme that works.
The meter is perfect, and it's incredibly... It's just complicated and exquisitely rendered
description of what a cat is.
It's very witty.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is very witty. And there's even a part where they get a reaction shot of every. Well, first he says he's going to do a poem about his cat. Jordy and Worf both look at each other like with this fucking comedic look. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And then he says this thing about, I can't remember the exact wording, but the line was about the counterbalance of the tail.
A tail is quite essential for your acrobatic talents. You would not be so agile if you lacked its counterbalance.
You would not be so agile if you lacked its counterbalance. But there was that was the second half of a couplet.
And then shows a reaction shot of Picard. And Picard actually looks impressed.
Yeah, Picard kind of smiles like, oh, okay, that was pretty good.
Remember, this man reads Shakespeare. So if anybody is well equipped to deal with like boring drama,
Picard is making the best of it. He's a, he's good. He's a very patient guy because he's a person who talks people out of war. What's the word for that? Diplomat. Yeah, he's a very diplomatic guy, so he can sit through boring things.
But he shares a knowing look with this lady next to him who you've never seen before.
Just a random person. She's not in the crew. She doesn't have a badge.
But she will come back in later.
She will be back in later. And actually, this scene is one of those ones that I like the way they set it up because it isn't just the main staff that's listening to the poetry. There's also randos there. And it makes the ship feel big and more communal, where it's not like, oh, all the main officers all hang out together away from the rest of the people on the ship.
Which
they all mill around and are equals socially.
Yeah, something that's
very important.
Kind of counter-indicated by Lower Decks later.
Well, yeah, sure.
There's shifts. So people, if you have opposite shifts, you're never going to see anybody on a giant
Absolutely.
ship.
And I think that Picard probably fosters more of a communal thing than maybe other people.
Yeah. Anyway.
Or maybe Riker does. Actually, Picard's kind of aloof, but still.
Riker.
It's a communist utopia where everyone is equal, and they all listen to poetry together regardless of rank.
Riker nods off. Troy elbows him. He starts clapping.
Commander, you have anticipated my denouement. I was not quite dead, but thank you.
Yeah. He also, before the poem starts, Riker comments to Troy. He's like, oh, man, I can't keep my eyes open. And she gives him the dirtiest look as if he is being so rude.
He's right in front of Data. Data has excellent hearing. Data heard him.
Her Betazoid senses.
Yeah.
Are so hit and miss because you think like as somebody who is always acutely aware of the emotions of those around her. First of all, I guess that'd be a terrible situation to be in that room. All she's just experiencing is everybody's boredom.
Yeah, she's really keeping it together considering. Yeah.
But you think she would like sense from Riker like, oh no, you like are exhausted. Something's not right with you. Just, as the ship's counselor, that's something you think that she would be.
That's a good point.
I'm just saying.
She must have been distracted by something else, I guess. Yeah, you're right. That happens a lot with Troy. I hadn't thought about that.
Her abilities are
they're plot driven when they appear. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fan theory that she's actually a fraud.
You're telling me this.
Yeah, always her just like stating the obvious is a way to try to cover her ass.
There was an episode where she loses her abilities and she doesn't think she can be a good counselor anymore. And she's like really upset and she says, "You have no idea what it's like." And they're like,
"We all feel like that all the time."
Yeah, no, we all live like this where we can't read each other's minds. You're just getting used to it, but you can still infer things and
check your privilege, Troy.
Yeah, and with a little bit of practice, you could just figure out how people are feeling by, looking at them and paying attention.
That almost implies that she has never bothered to learn facial expressions.
She hasn't. No. Well, that's the point of the episode is she sucks at nonverbal communication because she's never needed to learn it.
She probably gets along great with Data.
Yeah.
Actually, he's more intuitive about it. Anyway, because he later brings up that, he could tell that everybody was bored. But anyway, the cold open is still not ended yet. The poem ends.
We're still in the cold open?
Yeah.
It ends with Riker falling asleep.
Yeah,
again.
And snoring.
We never hear everyone's rapturous applause at the end of Data's poem. It's just crickets and Riker snoring. Cut to These Are the Voyages.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of Starship Enterprise. The goal to go where no one has gone before.
Let's see. Oh, Riker talks to Crusher. He's been on edge, and she gets out a tricorder and prescribes him a warm milk toddy. Now, I've had hot toddies, but that's not with milk. A hot toddy is water and vodka and lime and Let's see, what else do I put in a hot toddy?
Well, I have no.
Usually I just do that. I just hot water and some vodka and some lime and maybe a little bit of cayenne. This is Garth from the future. I actually put in lemon juice, not lime. I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, she
maybe a
offers
little
him
bit of sugar.
The recipe. What's interesting is
a milk toddy. I don't know.
She gives him like she gives him something physical. She hands him something like a tablet, like a digital tablet. She hands him something. And he goes, "What's this?" And she goes, "It's the recipe for the warm milk toddy."
So he's got to enter this into his computer.
Yeah, it's the first time they've ever implied such a thing. Like he's given like a floppy disk that he has to put into his replicator, which is interesting.
Yeah, that means that the warm milk toddy recipe is not on file on the ship's computer.
Yeah. She also says that it's Picard's aunt's recipe, which is a callback to another episode.
Apparently, this was in another episode. I was about to bring that up.
But it wasn't a toddy in the other episode. It was just a warm spiced milk.
Yeah, so Picard's... Here, I'm going to scan down here.
He also has, his aunt also has a cure for the common cold, which is just ginger tea with lemon. It's like, look, Auntie Picard, if that truly fucking worked, just saying. I would know right now. I'd tell you that.
Oh, apparently, actor Brent Spiner was highly impressed with Data's poem, Ode to Spot. He recalled, quote, "I couldn't believe it because not only did it rhyme, but it's technobabble and it's also had something to say. It had a really sweet point of view toward the cat." So Brett Spiner was a fan of the
No,
poem.
it's a good poem.
It is. Nobody else likes it, but we are meant to like it.
Well, I think part of the problem is also that people in Starfleet are so fucking jaded by all the weird. Okay, so sorry, we're derailing here, but there is a theory I've seen brought up.
I don't think we need to apologize. It's all right.
I've seen this theory brought up. I'm trying to remember where recently, and I feel like, it might have been Michael Swaim.
Okay. It's Star
Bell
Trek: The Next Futurama.
Yeah, and it was that because they're so jaded by seeing such crazy shit, it explains why they take so many risks. It's because they just
they are very risky.
They need to feel alive, and like, dude, when you've already traversed a black hole, what else gets you going? It's also that because of the way that their whole Starfleet society is set up, of this kind of seemingly meritocracy. Mm-hmm. And everything is already so buck wild that you have to do stuff insanely fucking batshit crazy to get the attention to even promote yourself up.
That's true. Every time we've seen someone promoted, it's because they took the helm in a moment of crisis.
Yeah, so it's just a whole organization of people doing mindless tasks on a daily basis that also
and they're thirsting.
Yeah, that also involves them so what they consider mindless tasks are things that to you and I would be like, that's insane.
That's so exciting.
So exciting.
And they're so bored by it.
Whatever.
That's why they don't like Data's poetry.
Yeah, exactly. They're jaded.
Well, and I think Starfleet is full of very caution to the wind type people because they're constantly, people live on the Enterprise.
Yes.
And every other week they're about to get blown up by something. How often is the Enterprise almost destroyed? And there's families on this.
Oh yeah, there's children.
There's children, and everyone's just hey, that's part of the deal. We're adventurers. So that's the entire mentality.
Yeah. Two episodes goes that way. 2 episodes after this one, the ship is taken over by Ferengi pirates, and they threaten to execute the children. Mm-hmm. And Riker's like, "How could you be so cruel?" And they're like, "How could you be so cruel to bring children into space?" It's like, touche, Ferengi, touche. You know what you signed up for.
I think that's just what Starfleet is all about. It's implied. We hardly ever see life on Earth outside of Starfleet. It's pretty rare that we see civilians. We do sometimes.
Yeah, and they delve more into that in Deep Space Nine.
Okay, interesting.
They have restaurants. It's a post-scarcity society that still has restaurants and businesses.
I love it. But they just do it for fun, I suppose.
Yeah. You go to Cisco's Creole Kitchen and have a good time.
I recently, don't ask me why, but I recently read the novelization of the motion picture by Gene Roddenberry. It was one of the Gene Roddenberry, a genius in many ways, and boy, he's a weird combination of very progressive and not at all.
Well, his idea of what is progressive is still rooted in misogyny.
Well, yeah, I mean, he comes from World War II, and then like he was middle-aged in the 60s.
Yeah.
And so,
there's a reason they took the reins away from him.
And suddenly the show got a lot better. But yeah, in the novelization early on, Kirk actually has a foreword. Like Kirk does a foreword, and he talks about how a lot of the original series is very overblown and dramatized, as if the original series is visible to people in the 23rd century as a historical document. It's kind of interesting that way.
They do read the logs.
They read the logs.
Lower Decks goes on to that.
But it's implied that like
everybody knows about their exploits.
Yeah, everyone knows about their exploits, but in a slightly dramatized way, because Kirk's like, it really wasn't that exciting.
Yeah.
And also, maybe he's just being modest, but he's also talking about how like a lot of people on Earth don't understand the value of space travel and like think that the Federation is a waste of time. And he's like trying to like justify why people go out into, and he's like, yeah, all us in the Federation and Starfleet, we're all like old fashioned humans. We still use first and last names, and we have all of these military conventions from hundreds of years ago. Whereas your average human on Earth, there's like this whole new human movement where they're all like sharing their consciousnesses and becoming one humanity. And it's like this whole other thing and like a new step of human civilization, and everybody in Starfleet is like old-timey humans, basically.
Deep Space Nine delves into that just a little bit, where they explain that Earth has become a paradise.
Yeah.
And the people there live such a sheltered existence, and they don't recognize or understand that without Starfleet or the Federation, it would not exist. And it doesn't become clear to them until, our quadrant is straight up invaded. I mean, even when the Borg showed up, they were still like, doo 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 doo.
Sitting ducks.
Yeah.
But there sort of is that implication that people on Earth don't have any concept of any of this stuff, and basically are probably very risk averse. So anybody who would take risks joins Starfleet and goes out into the stars. And then everybody else stays on Earth in their little dome.
Well, that's a point of contention even within Picard's family. His brother's like, oh, yeah, you just wanted to go off into space while I wanted to stay here. And
I'm going to do the real work, which is making wine. What are you doing?
Yeah, right. Oh, I don't know. Just like adjudicating the right of ascension for the Klingon Empire.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything to these people. They're like, nerd.
He's like, I'm someone's Chadish.
I don't know what that means. I'm making wine, nerd. Anyway, back to the episode.
Sorry.
Let's see, where were we? So he gets the recipe for a toddy. What I love about this episode too is it is a very slow burn as far as the plot goes. Like normally in an episode of Star Trek, like by the end of the cold open, we're given the problem. Here's what the episode's going to be about. Even if it kind of changes to something else, there's like an inciting incident that is threatening and like, oh boy, what are we going to do? That doesn't happen until like a third or halfway through this episode.
Remember, the cold open was about Riker being unable to keep his eyes
Riker
open
can't sleep.
Reading.
The first third of the show is Riker not being able to sleep and everything going on like a normal day. Because in Star Trek, most days are boring. Every once in a while you have an exciting time, and that's what each episode is. Yeah. So this is like an episode that takes place between the episodes until later on, because nothing exciting is happening for anyone else.
Yeah.
They're just going about their normal days and just studying star clusters, cataloging gases.
He tells Geordi, hey, I've been having trouble sleeping, so I'm going to go drink that hot toddy and go to sleep. Wake me up at 0700 tomorrow, or stop by my quarters at 0700 just to make sure I'm up. He drinks the toddy. He lays down, closes his eyes, and like as soon as he closes his eyes, shows Geordi walking down the hall. He's strutting, and he passes by a guy that we've never seen before. And the guy says something. He goes, "Hey, Gordon, how's it going?" See again, to say like, no, they've got friends outside of the bridge crew.
They do, yeah. You don't even know. You don't know. They all have enriched lives. You never see any of these people.
Yeah. You get to meet all
these lower decks people.
Junior grade Shipley later.
That's right. You get to meet the barber later.
But yeah, and then he like rings the doorbell. And
Riker's like, my head just hit the pillow. Sorry, it's 7 a.m. What?
Yeah.
That's impossible. Cut to commercial. Beginning of Act 2, Worf is getting a haircut from Mr. Mott, the ship's barber. Apparently, in another episode... Yeah, and he showed up in a couple other episodes, I believe. And in one episode, Picard is like the only one on the ship because it's getting like a baryon sweep or something. And so everybody else is off the ship on shore leave, and then Picard is like trapped on there while this energy field is like slowly moving through the ship, and he has to like
at the
survive.
same time that the ship is being heisted.
It's being heisted, yeah. Anyway,
by the same guy that would later play Tuvok.
Ooh, very good. That's right. I forgot about that.
He shows up a few times.
Yeah. So it's being that was like. We're combing the desert. We ain't found shit. That's him too,
That's
right?
Tuvok.
Yeah.
I've been acting for 35 years. 135 credits on IMDb. I was in a long-running series. You might remember it. Star Trek. But all I'm known for is combing the desert and saying, we ain't found shit.
And they find Picard, and he's like, "Who are?" They say, "Who are you?" And Picard says he's the barber Mott. So Picard identifies himself as this guy.
Bolians, if you don't know, they are the guys, the people who are blue, but not Andorians because they don't have eye stalks.
Right.
They are blue, and they have what I like to call that taint ridge that just runs down their face.
Yeah, it's a ridge of a taint.
That runs down their face.
Oddly, their actual taints have no ridge. It's all up on the top of their heads.
Yeah. A lot of the alien species in Star Trek.
They just have ridged heads.
Oh, well also, if you look at it like, dude, that's just a vagina on someone's face. Like, there's so many that have
I know, isn't that odd?
things on their face.
Either that means that we all just think random objects look like genitals, or genitals are such simple shapes that everything looks like them. Because you're right. There's no getting around. He has a total vagina on his face. So yeah, he's cutting Worf's hair and blah, 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 blah. Mott is annoying to everyone. There's a lot of people being irritated by other people in this show. Everybody doesn't like Data's poetry. Everybody doesn't like the barber.
Yes. Oh, but yeah, the Mott is going on about how luxurious Klingon hair is, and then he starts saying, well, you know, on all those away missions, you're exposing yourself to lots of wind and sun. You really should start conditioning. But before he can, like, go into his sales pitch, Worf just looks at the scissors and freaks out.
Oh, that's right.
He grabs Mott's hand and, like, stands up.
And he kills Mott. He just snaps his neck.
We never see him again.
It's crazy. That's why it's his last episode.
He doesn't really kill him, but he, like, does, like, grip his hand, his arm, to a point where you can tell it's painful. And I'm just thinking of what the position that Mott is in, where he's like, I can't report this assault to anybody because it's the head of security who is doing it to me.
When the head of human resources hits on you, I don't know, man, you're screwed.
Hey, Cab Worf.
So Geordi comes in. He got dizzy in the cargo bay when he was working with Data, and his visor's all like blinked out on him. And so it turns out he's like has a bacterial infection in his implants.
You can't rush through this because this is what, like, you know, Crusher has so little to do with this episode.
Yeah, this is a Crusher scene, everybody.
Yes, yeah.
So
she scans his head.
She does a great job as a doctor in this scene, I have to say.
Yeah, and tells him that he appears to have some kind of bacterial infection around his implant sites for his visor. She also says it's a bacterial infection that's not in any of the computers and has never been seen before.
Pink eye.
But she just kind of like shrugs it off. It's like, okay, you are
actually
chief medical officer, and somebody comes to you with a bacterial infection, a bacteria of which has never been experienced by Starfleet.
Yeah.
And
she's like,
it's one of those things.
We're going to call it the Geordi bacteria. You have a sensor array named after you, and this is the Geordi infection.
But he returns back to Cargo Bay 4 to see Data. And this is another point where it's like, wait a minute.
Right, so he and Data were working together. He got dizzy, left. He comes back, and Data's like, oh, weren't you going to go to sickbay?
Yeah, and he's like, Data, I've been gone for 90 minutes. And Data's like, no, that's impossible. And he's like, yeah.
My internal chronometer says you've been gone for about 1 minute and 6 seconds.
Yeah, and so then Data checks with the ship's computer and it informs him that, the actual time. And he goes, oh, wow, you have been gone for 90 minutes and 17 seconds.
Apparently, Data was standing there not realizing time was passing for an hour and a half.
He's like, I will do an internal diagnostic later. And that's another thing that comes up that bugs me about this episode.
What?
Well, we haven't got to the point of the plot where I can start giving away all these spoilers.
Okay, fine. As long as you remember to tell me, because I'm very curious what this is all about.
Remember time and data.
Time and data. All right, I'll remember. So Riker is on the bridge. He's doing his best. He's really tired. Oh, he's starting to like notice weird things, kind of like Worf.
Yeah.
Like Riker runs his hands over the smooth console and he's like, this feels weird.
It's one of the
this reminds me of something.
Yeah, it's one of the few times where we see Riker at the helm. Like,
right.
He is in the captain's chair. And then he informs an ensign to chart a course. She says, the computer won't accept it. He goes, first time navigating through a globular cluster, eh? Let me show you. And he sits down and he starts to explain that you have to compensate for the magnetic blah, 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 blah. And as he's doing that, he runs his hands across the console, and that's when he freaks out. But they do a close-up shot of his hand, and that's where we learned something that will blow your fucking mind. It changes all of Star Trek. It's the 23rd century. And they're still using Phillips head sheet metal screws to hold things together.
Yeah, you see 2 Phillips head screws. And like you think they'd use the kind they have in bathroom stalls where you can only twist them one way but not the other. But no, you could just anybody could undo that thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's like 300-year-old technology. And in my lifetime, I've seen it go from the standard being Phillips head, which is the little plus sign screws, to hex head, which is a star shape. It's like a 6-sided star shape. And those are becoming more and more common. And back before we were born, Cody, it was all flathead screws.
Do you know why they're Phillips?
Why they're called Phillips?
Well, what the whole innovation was, why it's a big deal.
I can imagine because having used a screw gun to try to screw in a flathead screw, they're always sliding off. But a Phillips will lock in place, so it's way easier to use. I hate flathead screws.
They come from the aircraft industry during World War II for mass production because for that reason, and also because that's something to do with over torquing. A Phillips is supposed to pop out if it over screws, but they don't anymore.
Yeah, that doesn't.
You know how many fucking drivers I have stripped out? They're all made like shit these days.
But I guess my thought would be, boy, 300 years from now, if we're still using screws. Look at the progress. We've gone from flathead screws to Phillips head to star head. By the 23rd century, we should have like 18-sided screws.
And this is on a piece of equipment that would be analogous to, say, your iPad.
Yeah.
Look at your iPad. Are you seeing Phillips head screwdrivers?
Well, that's a design convention of Apple, which everything gets more Apple in the J.J. Abrams universe, and then it goes back again. So maybe people like that look now.
I guess.
Yeah, that's what it is. They like potted plants. They want the whole ship to look like a Hilton in the 90s.
They had never intended for there to be a close-up shot of this panel.
Well, that's possible too, Cody.
When designing the show. Anyway, yeah, he freaks out. He doesn't really freak out. He just kind of goes, and he stands up, and the ensign's like, is something wrong? And he's like, I don't know.
And then he runs away.
To go talk to Troy.
Yes, so
moving the plot along. Sorry, we're already like 40 minutes in.
You don't need to apologize. This is going to be a 3-hour episode. I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Okay,
this is great. This is whatever. Like, if people are still listening, they're enjoying what they're hearing,
and we polled.
They're hoping that this will last as long as possible.
And we polled the Discord. They chose this.
Yeah, no, because I was thinking, is this actually entertaining to anyone other than us? Like, is this a good idea for us to do this as a show? And everybody on Discord, which was like 6 people, said yes. So we're going to go with that.
6 people cannot be wrong.
That's right. You guys represent the whole audience. So anyway, they find a weird shimmering plasma conduit way up in the rafters of the cargo deck 4.
Yeah.
So cut to commercial again, and they realize it's a space rift in subspace. They have a meeting in the meeting room, and it looks like it's tetryon particles that are normally unstable in normal space. And what are you laughing at?
You thought it was going to be tachyons, you silly bastards. Yeah, it's tetryon.
It's tetrons. Come on, get it together, people. Picard asks if the rift poses a danger to the Enterprise, and they're like, well, if it spreads, it'll probably eat up, it'll cause explosive decompression and,
kill
it'll eat up the
but,
ship. But that'll be hours from now, so it's cool.
Could we,
They don't talk about, like, separating the saucer section or anything. They're like, no.
They have a contingency plan. It's that they will
do that
then
if we have to.
They will transport that section of the ship just out into space.
And then they'll put up, like, a force field to seal up the hole.
Yeah, that was the plan.
So Riker talks to Troy about how she's feeling trapped, and then she talked to some other people who are also feeling this. Worf's, of course, scared of scissors now.
Well, she said Worf, but then she says, I wonder if anybody else was. And then, like, implying that she's going to somehow just put out a mass email. Do they do mass messages in Star Trek?
I don't know that they really have social media. We know that they do FaceTime in Star Trek. But yeah, it's like a memo. She basically writes a memo to everyone on the ship. Hey, are you guys feeling weird? They get this memo every other week because it's Star Trek. Right. There's always weird shit happening. So, most people just immediately throw the memo away, but like 5 people didn't, and they all meet together for this group. And it's one random lady who was at Data's poetry reading, Worf, Riker, LaForge. Yeah. And so they're all trying to remember what their dreams have been. They're like, I've had weird dreams. I have too. And they're like recounting and then remembering. Oh, you're right. I do remember that.
But you know who's not there? Who did experience something weird?
Who's that?
Data. Data lost time.
That's true. I guess that's actually a really good point. I wonder why Data wasn't there.
And then to jump ahead, he confirms. Oh, we haven't gotten to the whole point yet.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. We don't need to be in chronological order with this.
Well, they find out that when do they ask if there's anybody missing from the ship?
That's a little bit later.
Okay. They're going to establish that people have been popping off the ship and they don't know how. Yeah. Data confirms that he himself was not on the Enterprise for that 90 minutes.
He has these synthetic fluids floating around his body that get pulverized by radiation from the ship every minute of every day. And he looked at his fluids and realized that what didn't happen for an hour and a half yesterday. So he concludes that he wasn't on the ship during that time.
But they never do anything else with that information.
Yeah,
that's does not factor into the rest of the story.
At any rate, they realize, hey, we're all trying to recount this thing we can barely remember. We apparently have been having a shared dream here. You know what we could do? Let's actually use the holodeck, not for fun. We could actually use it as a tool.
Yeah.
So they go into the holodeck and
so carrying on with the theme of AI composing things. Again, I said Data doing poetry is like Chat GPT.
Yeah.
This is even more so because they just start giving the holodeck prompts.
Some people are better at doing prompts than others. Like some of them are very specific. I feel like Troy was really good at it. She knew exactly what words to use to like get to where they needed. Other ones were like, yeah, it was kind of like a table. I don't know. Another one's like, computer, make a table 3 feet tall, 4 feet wide, 6 feet long, at this much of an angle, and then so they basically narrow it down through in an iterative fashion, trying to reconstruct what they remember.
Yeah, they realize they all have some vague memory of some kind of table, so they start asking the computer to give them different kinds of tables. But here's the thing: is their prompts only have small changes.
But they're like, make the table a little bit shorter.
But the result is a completely different table made out of different material each time.
Yeah, it's like the computer really is shooting in the dark. It actually is very similar to when you ask like DALL-E to like make you an image based on a prompt, and it makes it, and then you change one word in the prompt and then ask it to do it again, and it's a completely different image.
Yeah.
So that's actually that tracks. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They slowly work their way toward like an evil dentist's chair.
Yeah.
Like a dentist torture chair.
They end up, it's like an examination table that seems to be the reason why Riker freaked out when he was sitting at the console is because
the smoothness of it.
Well, it triggered a memory. He was behind something like a table because the console on the bridge goes about chest height and they kind of sit close to it. And he realized that he was being triggered by the memory of having some kind of tablet-like thing that was restricting his movement over his chest.
And after that,
there's a logic to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then they like realize there's like a pivoting like arm with multiple like things that can move on the arm.
Add a articulated arm, double jointed at the head of the table. And then it does it. And then Worf goes, yes. Now put a pair of scissors on the end of it. And it's the exact scissors that the barber was holding.
I guess that's standard issue Starfleet scissors. If you say scissors, that's the only shape you're going to get. But then Worf like spends all of his time like changing the scissors till it like has this hook and serrated edge on one side.
Add a single handle. 6 centimeters long.
Yeah, which is a good character thing for Worf because he's a weapons expert, so he's going to have paid attention to the exact shape of blades and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of a cool
ends up
touch.
looking less like a pair of scissors and more like a cartoony can opener from like a Looney Tunes.
Yeah, totally. And then they realize, oh, were there any smells? They kind of gloss over the smells because it's a TV show, but they're like, oh, sounds. We could get into that. Oh, there's clicking, more clicking, and so they change up the sounds till they have all these little click, 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 chatters.
Click, click, clicks. And then as it Riker goes, I've been in this room before. We all have, and that's the act break.
Quick production note: Wendy Noose, sound editor, and supervising sound editor Jim Worthington and Bill Wistrom were creating the clickings, and Noose has recalled that she had a really fun time doing this. She said, quote, "We had decided what kinds of clicks we wanted with Rick Berman and Peter Laurston at the spotting session. Then the three of us actually sat there one night and wrote a script in English and then transposed it to clicks. We wanted it to sound organic, or we wanted it to be organic, not synthesized, and we had a cadence to it. We decided that what the click should be and the kind of feeling they should have. So they wrote dialogue for what will turn out to be these aliens' voices, and then they transposed it to clicks, click. Just so that they could make cool clicks. I'll continue the quote here. Then we brought in a group of people to do it. So in addition to the individual clickers, we had group clicking. You see 5 people clicking really intently like the professionals they are, and I just had to leave the stage, and that's what you think. I can't believe I'm doing this, end quote. So, they had a lot of fun making the clicks, and they actually tried to create a whole language out of clicks just for that. That is the end of that act break. Let's see where we are here.
Is this when we reveal that people aren't on the ship?
Yes, let's do it. Go ahead and reveal that, Cody.
So they bring Picard into Cargo Bay 4 and hey, look at this crazy rift that's happening.
It's gotten bigger.
I also like the idea that they discover something that's potentially dangerous, and the first response is, hey, let's shove our captain's face in
let's get the captain. Come over here. Look up.
Get real close to this
giant
but
thing
then
we don't
I
know
think
what
that's
it is.
also when Data reveals that he did his diagnostic and he was not on the ship, and they go, oh, that's interesting. And then Picard's like, computer, is there anybody not on the Enterprise right now? And the computer's like, oh, yeah, there's 2.
Lieutenant Edward Helger and Ensign Ranger.
How did they leave? I have no idea. And it's like, this
computer... This brings up a whole other conversation about how does the computer know about people. So let's get into this, shall we? This is a section we call, how does privacy work in Star Trek?
Well, first of all, you think for security reasons, anytime anyone, while the ship is in motion, anytime anyone leaves the ship or aborts the ship, should be documented and noted.
Yes.
And it seems like the computer was just on a need to know, or you have to ask basis. It's well, you never asked me if somebody was.
You never asked me if somebody suddenly disappeared, and by a way which we know not, in a spaceship in the middle of space.
Yeah, because usually, also only the enlisted people are wearing badges. The comm badges act as your communicator and GPS, basically.
Yeah, so the question is, how does the computer know that specific people are missing and which ones they are? It must be that there's cameras everywhere.
Biosensors.
Or some, I guess it's biosensors. So not necessarily film cameras, but the computer can do a quick scan of every room at once and say, hey, we don't see the biosigns of these particular people.
Because we know that when the transporters, when they transport people, it stores a copy of your biosignature.
Right.
Which is used to solve a bunch of problems.
But it's never used to make a new person if the person dies on an away mission.
2 episodes from this one, the same time when those Ferengis show up, they accidentally stumble into the fact that they can use, theoretically, the transporter as a fountain of youth and de-age anybody.
Oh, that's Rascals.
Or age anybody
up.
Yeah,
but where Picard becomes a little boy.
Yeah, it's a little Rascals.
As does Guinan and Roe and
Keiko O'Brien.
Keiko, that's right.
But they never bring that up again, including at some point where there's they also reversed aging in season 2, but we don't talk about it because Pulaski was there and nobody talks about Pulaski.
They all got really old.
Started rapid aging, and they're like, "Oh, well, we can use your biosignature to."
That happened in the original series too. There was an episode where everybody ages a bunch. I think it's for the same reason that it happened to Pulaski. They basically redid a TOS episode for TNG.
Yeah. Point is, there's not a lot of coherent or
well, maybe it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we could de-age ourselves, but what, do we really want to live forever? And people are just so smart in the future. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. I want nature
we
to
already
take
lived
its course.
167.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough time. Everyone in Star Trek who gets really old is ready to die. 167 years is plenty.
I'm just trying to say there doesn't seem to be a lot of continuity with some of these concepts in Star Trek, where they don't think about the logical.
Yeah, now that we know about this, can we not apply this information to everything else?
It's why they always have to conveniently get rid of the one crew member who could solve the problem by having them go to a conference somewhere.
Yeah, often crew members that could actually make the whole show end much sooner are, sleeping. So then they realize, people have been missing, and we don't know what's going on. Let's see.
Sorry, we completely glossed over way, way, way back.
What?
The reason they even go to Cargo Bay 4 in the first place is because the computer tells them there was an explosion that killed everybody in Cargo Bay 4.
Oh, that's right, and everybody was fine. Yeah, that's why they were.
But rather than push the intercom and go, "Hey, Cargo Bay 4, are you guys okay in there?" They fucking rush down there to find that, like, no, everybody's just fine,
hanging out.
Yeah, hanging out.
Just moving 55-gallon drums
from one side of the room to the other.
Yeah, that's what they do in Cargo Bay 4.
50-gallon drums that are labeled with radioactive symbols that they just.
You know what occurs to me? Why don't they just? Because remember how that one 55-gallon drum dropped onto Worf and broke his spine?
Yeah.
Why don't they make it so that the gravity is way lower on cargo bays? Why would you ever stack a heavy thing high up and then keep the gravity at 1G? Why not make it like 0.1 G?
Yeah,
so that even when it falls, it's not going to hurt.
Yeah, also, they have no forklifts. How are they stacking these things so goddamn high? It's like a Costco.
Well, you could easily do it if you had no gravity.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the cargo bays never have gravity or have
maybe you have to hit a switch, and they forgot to when that thing fell on.
That must have been it, but you'd think there'd be something.
Also, Klingons have doubles of all their organs
but not the spine. Not the spine. Anyway, let's see what happens next.
I mean, the spine's not an organ. I get that.
Oh, they realize, okay, so the rift is getting bigger. It actually looks just like the Flash when Q appears, or the Flash when the ship goes to warp and goes off into the sunset and goes whoosh.
Which kind of makes sense because they were using funneled warp energy.
Yeah, so it is, but it's just this sort of stagnant Flash, and it's gotten bigger to the point where they can no longer transport it away, and so this thing is going to cause a hull breach, and there's nothing they can do about it.
And then suddenly they find out, hey, those 2 crew members are back. We should go check on them.
Yes. So they do find one of them, and he's pale white and freaked out and half dead, and he falls out of the door when they open his quarters door.
And then the Crusher.
His blood is turning to liquid polymer.
Yep, and then it does, because then he dies right there.
Yep.
They see a lot of death, and they are very rarely fazed by it unless it's somebody they know personally.
It's part of being a Starfleet, man.
It's to be empathetic without empathy.
Well, you got to be, you got to be on top of stuff. You can't be going oh, no, this random person.
True.
Yeah.
Look, they all can't be Tasha Yar, right? They can't all have some kind of impact.
Let's see.
Spoilers.
Spoilers for the...
for a 30-year-old show.
Yeah, for the first season of TNG. Let's see. They can't beam it away.
Oh, so then this is where they start. They're trying to figure out. Okay, there's some kind of connection. They know there's a connection between the people disappearing and this rift going on in Cargo Bay 4. They figure out some technobabble. They're there's those little tetrions.
Yeah.
Maybe we can trace them back to the source, and then they're revealed. Then Data's oh no, because tetrions, they're basically any particle that just
they randomly change, so you can't really trace them.
You can't go where. Yeah, you can't trace them
and
backwards.
They realize
and then Worf has a rare instance of Worf coming up with an excellent solution that nobody shoots down. Usually Worf has a suggestion and everybody's no, that's ridiculous. Shut up, Worf. And Worf's well, what if we make a homing device? And
because we don't know where the particles are coming from, but we do know people have been being abducted.
Yeah.
And where clearly they go away then come back, so maybe they go away to the source of these things, and so Riker's like, well, I know I'm gonna get abducted tonight because I keep getting abducted.
He's been abducted every single night.
Yeah.
Apparently.
In fact, we forgot to tell you that his arm was his arm was cut off and then refused back together.
Real fucking horror show.
Imperfectly, because
.02 micron
Crusher
off.
sees that his arm's slightly offset from the way it normally is.
Well, he leaned. We see a new feature of the med beds that we've never seen before, which is Riker is leaning against it, and it's scanning his arm like an X-ray.
Oh, okay.
And that's how they know. And then that his arm appears to have been severed and reattached, and it is .02 microns off.
So Riker's like, put the homing device on me, I'm gonna get abducted. So they like, well, best of luck, Riker. We really feel bad about this. Wait a minute, maybe there's something we can do to help you. We'll give you a neurostimulant.
Yeah.
So that because they're gonna knock you out, like because they're always knocking Riker out.
They figured out that they're using some kind of neuro.
They're using a downer of some kind.
Yeah, a neuro tranquilizer. So here's the thing: at the very beginning, Riker says to Crusher, "Hey, I can't sleep." And she's like, oh, it might be you're not getting REM sleep, which is really important. We know that REM sleep is very important from night terrors. So she's like, oh, well, that's real unfortunate. He's like, can you give me anything to help me, I don't know, sleep? And she says, how about warm milk? But then later we find out that there's these tranquilizers that can do this.
That would have been much better than the warm milk for Riker.
And he says, hey, well, what can you give me to keep me awake? And they're like, how about meth?
Yeah, so they give him a hit of meth.
They give him
and it's old school too. They don't like make it like a one for that they just stick onto his neck with a psst.
No, he pulls out like a glass bulb pipe with a torch.
Yeah, they hook him up and he takes a few huge hits of meth. His eyes dilate. And he's like, all right, I'm ready. They give him a phaser, and then they stick a tricorder in his pocket, and they put a homing device on his arm, and then they like push him off to bed, and he's sitting there all methed out, holding the phaser, trying to pretend that he's sleeping.
I mean, he obviously you know that he didn't really.
Yeah, no, I made that up, but they did give him a cortical stimulant, and he's obviously like
on edge,
really scared, on edge, in bed, waiting.
Also, okay, so this the homing device is like a half of a cuff that they put on his arm.
Yeah.
And then somehow it attaches through his clothes.
Yeah, it either attaches to his arm with needles of some kind that grip his arm.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it somehow adheres.
Or it
to
just
him.
adheres to his shirt. But boy, they could just take that off. I don't know.
Yeah, the aliens.
You think they'd put the homing device like inside of him
as a suppository?
Yeah, they could stick it up his butt. That would be way better
than this thing.
Actually, no, it wouldn't because they're aliens. They would probe that.
Oh.
They would need to stick it somewhere else.
So they're not going to probe. And how do you don't know where they're not? Yeah, there's no way of knowing where they're going to probe.
So the reason this is a Good Least Haunted episode is because this is an alien abduction episode. Yeah. Like, we have had aliens kidnap characters in the past.
Oh, all the time.
That happens all the time. But we don't really have the aliens knock you out and then you suddenly like lose time and you don't know what happened to you. But this is like this is Star Trek doing a riff on a very common thing in the early 90s.
And I'm going to get into
pop
that
culture.
After we finish the episode.
In Cody's Junction.
Yeah, after we finish the episode, we'll go over all the ways that this is tied to alien abduction mythology.
Just so you all know, we actually are heading toward an interesting thing here. Not to say this isn't all interesting. It is to me.
Oh, you don't want to hear about Riker doing meth?
Anyway, so Riker, a portal opens up in his bedroom, and he gets whisked away, feet first. He just hovers over, and then whoop through the portal, and then he pops up. And he wakes up on the slab, which looks not much like what they created in the holodeck.
Nothing like what they made on the holodeck.
Which is good. I would have been pissed if they used any of the same props. Because it's like, wait a minute.
But to the point where they specified it was a metal table, but when you look at it, like he's not on metal at all. They're on like a foam pad.
Yeah, but that's like alien metal. It looks foam, but it isn't. This is like another dimension. That's like, well, Picard even says it's like another universe. This is like some other thing. So this is like in a show filled with aliens, these guys have got to look very alien. Like nothing. It needs to be like more foreign than anything we normally see.
Yeah. I guess that's the point. That's like, look, we deal with aliens all the time. So how do you convey something that's like alien? Well, what if it's from another universe? Yeah,
what's alien to people that deal with aliens in a sci-fi thing? Alien times 2. So apparently these aliens, which I thought were a pretty cool design, they look like fish people in monk's robes.
More insectoid, I thought.
Yeah, maybe insectoid. They
got,
have
hard.
they have Zoidberg claws.
Yeah, Zoidberg claws, which I noticed in a cool piece of detail. The scissors that aren't scissors at the end of the arm have one edge longer than the other that's curved.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one is serrated. The hands of these aliens match the claws.
It would be like us having like
an actual robotic arm.
A little robotic hand with little human fingers on it.
Yeah.
just for like holding and pinching. Anyway, Riker is stuck here. He can't really sit up because
that claw thing
is like aimed right at his throat, hovering above his throat like 2 inches away. So he I don't know if he can see it. It's good he doesn't jolt upright. He would stab himself in the throat. But apparently the director Robert Weimer, Brendan Braga, and Michael Pilner were kind of disappointed with the look of the aliens. They were planning on maybe bringing them back. They kept an open ending in the script.
They
like,
heavily implied
these
could be
the new bad guys.
Yeah, heavily
But
implied.
they said they didn't like the look of the aliens and they decided not to bring them back. Braga stated, they just felt like monks, fish monks, and monks aren't terrifying.
Obviously, this guy is never spending time around Catholics.
He also said he was displeased with the previews of the episode. He stated, the like coming soon on Star Trek next week.
Yeah.
Apparently, the trailers gave it all away. The trailer showed the aliens. They showed that they're using the human crew as guinea pigs. So like everybody who wrote the episode were like, well, fuck, you gave away the twist. So yeah, the alien scenes were felt to be too languid and creating an off balance. They weren't cut together in a very good way. He said, Weimer said, quote, there was a story consensus to do lighting control, smoke control, and limit what we saw. They wanted to really make it artsy and not show the aliens too well to make it scarier. And like they basically just ran out of time. So they just sort of filmed it straight and the aliens weren't that scary.
Well, they also specified on the holodeck that the room was dark. And they can only see one bright light. But then when Riker's in there, the thing is like fully lit.
Yeah, so they
can see everything.
It sounds like they kind of rushed the very end of this, which is a shame because it was a very cool set. Well, and if it had been filmed well, it could have been really scary and really cool.
The turnaround on this is insane. I think the final draft of the script was finished like August 21st of 1992. The episode premieres in October of 92.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the turnaround time from script to filming to editing to special effects, all of that.
In a few weeks.
Yeah, in like less than 2 months.
That's amazing because, boy, with the technology, they were still using reel-to-reel film for this show, which meant for every shot, they had to basically redo the set, move walls out of the way, move the camera, change the lighting.
And you don't know how it turns out until you've developed the film, too.
Yeah, so for every shot, you have a shot on the bridge, say, and you have multiple camera angles for different characters. Zoom ins on certain characters, you have the establishing shot. They filmed the entire scene for each shot, which there'd be like a dozen of them. So the actors had to film the scene like 10 times. And between each one, they would spend an hour setting up the next shot. Yeah. So, you have a few minutes, and it takes all day to film.
Yeah.
And they did that for this whole 40-minute long episode. And then they edited it all together in a few weeks. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean,
so they rushed a lot of things in this show.
They were pressed for time.
Unfortunately. That's one of the things, I wish that modern Star Trek were more episodes a season, but I can see why it isn't. Because
back in the day it was 26.
It was 26 episodes a season, and the actors they were run ragged. There are certain scenes in Star Trek where you can see Patrick Stewart's falling asleep standing up in the background. Yeah. They were working 10-hour, 12-hour days, 16-hour days sometimes.
I also feel like this must have been done after some sort of vacation. Because I only say that because
were they all tanned?
Marina Sirtis.
Oh, interesting.
Troy,
I hadn't noticed that. She's usually very pale.
Yeah, Troy looks very tan.
Interesting.
Also, she has a hairstyle that hadn't really shown up before.
Yeah, she has a perm with tied back in a ponytail.
Yeah,
it's very 90s.
A permy-tail.
Permy-tail.
Permutations.
On a theme.
So then anyway, Riker, he is like, oh, joke's on you fuckers. I'm not really asleep.
And he jumps up and they don't quite notice because they're all trying to stop the rift because at the same time, they've tracked Riker's tracking device. They figured out where the rift is, and they're trying to like throw other particles in to close the rift, hoping Riker will get out in time, but they have no way of getting him back.
They were hoping that they were going to wait till he came back to close it, but in the meantime, the rift starts spreading at such a rate they can't contain it.
Yeah, it's a ticking clock of like 6 minutes, and they're like, it's going to destroy the ship in 6 minutes, so we've got to just close this up, and Riker's going to get stuck there.
It went from 9 minutes to less than 3 minutes in a matter of 1 minute.
And usually it's the other way with TV show time. Usually they stretch out time, but this one it was compressed. But it is a time stretchy.
That was the whole
anyway.
point. Was like, oh shit, we need to really work quick here. So they just start like, well, I guess we're gonna write Riker off as a loss. Start bombarding those particles.
See if you have his genetics in the transporter. Maybe we can make another Riker. We did it once.
Somebody page up his transporter clone from that other episode. But also Riker notices that there's another crew member. She's on a table being experimented on.
There were two that were missing. One came back dead with his polymer blood, but the other one is still missing, and she's there. So Riker grabs her and jumps through the hole.
Not before he phasers himself an alien.
Oh, does he? I forgot about that.
Yeah, the aliens notice that he's like moving around, and he can see the backside of Data through the rift.
That's right. So he knows that if he jumps through, he'll end up in Cargo Bay 4.
Yeah, and so he like scoops her up, and then he phasers a alien who has a delayed reaction to the phaser, where he's like walking, and then he like stops, and then he like falls backwards.
That's how the aliens in other dimensions react to phasers. It takes a second.
Yeah, and then he hero dives with this lady in his arms through the rift back into Cargo Bay 4, just in time for the rift to like close, but then it turns into a little free floating ball of light that then exits through the hull of the ship.
This is like the 7th time that a ball of light that was the problem the whole episode flies around and then zooms out of the hull off into space. You've seen this ball of light many times.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you've seen it once, you've seen it
implying that the fish people might come back. They never do.
Well, so it ends with them having a debrief session.
A very brief one.
Yeah.
They didn't really do a lot of unpacking of the show.
Emphasis on the brief.
Yeah.
And unlike this show that we're doing here. And then they'd say like, oh yeah, so they're Solanogen-based life forms, which is why they couldn't come into our dimension. But they because Riker's tricorder was recording the whole time he was in there, they know that it seems like they had created a pocket version of our universe within their universe so they could experiment on us. Riker comments, fish in a bucket of water. And then it seems like the rift they were trying to open in Cargo Bay 4 was going to turn Cargo Bay 4 into a pocket of their universe so they could come into ours. Who knows? There might have actually been some kind of communication at some point. And I think either Data or Geordi opines that, maybe they're just like us. They're just explorers. You know, they weren't aware that they were hurting us in any way, which is something that the Enterprise has done many times.
The Enterprise has accidentally caused all kinds of destruction without realizing it.
Including instituting a warp speed limit in certain parts of the universe. That's
right.
They never address again. Apparently, warp drive is ripping the fabric of space and time apart, and they're like, we just won't go that fast.
It is a metaphor for global warming in that episode, and like real life, after a few episodes, they kind of forget about the speed limit, and then they go back to destroying the universe by traveling too fast. Warp.
But they're like, I think that they didn't mean any harm, and then Riker says something kind of ominous, where he's like, I don't know. I can't remember exactly the word that he uses, but it's very like dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, he's like, well, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, what was
somebody who's just exploring is not going to be doing what these
cutting
guys
off
doing.
My fucking arm and
cutting off my fucking arm. These guys are Riker's gonna seek revenge.
We know, and they're like, what was that thing that left the ship? Like maybe it was a probe, and they're like, well. We'll see them again. And that's exactly how the episode ends. It just cuts to the outside of the exterior of the ship, just going through space, and then roll credits.
That's it, yeah.
And we never see them again because apparently fish monks aren't scary. Also,
I liked those characters.
Also, they only have at this point, they've already written the rest of season 6. They know they have one season left to do. Yeah. Are you going to introduce a whole new big bad and resolve it in one season?
I mean, they could have shown up in DS9. I think that had started by now.
It would have been interesting if they had, they could have tied them to the
wormhole.
The Gamma
Quadrant. They could be the builders or whatever.
Yeah. The founders.
The founders, thank you.
They're called the founders.
I'm not up on my.
Okay, so I want to know why
So this has been our review, but now we're gonna get into.
Oh no, I'm still in the review.
Okay, never mind.
Why I was upset about the time? I said at the very beginning the time.
Oh, I forgot all about this. So yeah, time and Data.
Riker isn't sleeping. He shows up and tells Geordi and Data, "I'm not sleeping," and they're like, "Hey, we are about to start this experiment."
Right.
Later, we find it's the experiment that attracted the aliens' attention in the first place.
Oh.
So if the experiment attracts the aliens,
so
how could they have already been abducting Riker?
Yeah, they would have had to start abducting him and making him not sleep well after the experiment that Geordi does starts.
Yes.
And he hasn't started it yet.
Exactly.
Ooh, so they're time-traveling fish monks.
And at the end, when they're like, well, how'd they find us? And Geordi even says, it must have been the experiment I did. Because think about it. It shows up in Cargo Bay 4, and that's where I routed the energy through. So therefore...
Here's an idea. Maybe...
Let's just tell everybody. I didn't like the speed limit. He says, "Let's just tell everybody not to do what I did."
They send out a memo to the rest of Starfleet. Don't do Geordi's experiment.
But we already know that nobody in Starfleet reads their fucking memos.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. The Enterprise has another memo about what not to do because something terrible happened. Whatever. Anyway. Yeah, so maybe what it was that Riker hasn't been sleeping well anyway, so he was an easy target for the aliens. And they're kind of like looking at everybody. They're like, he's not sleeping very well. Let's abduct him.
Yeah, there's no. I didn't expect them to explain to us how they picked their targets, but it is kind of convenient that like the targets for the most part were all the bridge crew.
Maybe the bridge crew all sleep on the same deck, and the aliens are just looking at that part of the ship more.
I think they say that the guy whose blood gets swapped out is Deck 19. Section 9.
Are the decks? I think do the decks start at, is one the top or the bottom? Does it count down or up? I think it counts down from the bridge.
I know 10 forward is on the 10th.
Yeah, that's 10th. But is that 10th from the top or the bottom?
Of the saucer.
Of the saucer. Yeah.
And because if you go for the saucer, like at a certain point the saucer ends, do they carry on that numbering convention through the neck to the body?
I think so. I think they just do. It's like horizontal cross sections all the way down.
The ship makes no sense.
So I think one is the bridge.
Makes no sense.
The turbo lifts? What's wrong with the turbo lifts?
It's because they travel, at least more so in the original series, they travel through parts of the ship that weren't wide enough for it to even exist.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess the original series ship was pretty small.
There's some things where like it just doesn't make sense if you actually track their movements where they say they're going and you take out the schematic. You're like, wait, so then it moves diagonally. And it's like at some point it just makes more sense that they would have to get off turbo lifts at one point and get on another turbo lift. In the same way that on certain skyscrapers you can only go so high before you have to switch to a different elevator.
I always thought of turbo lifts as pretty much functioning like those sucking tubes from like in offices where you have
back
like
in the day,
and then you like I'm gonna send a memo through the sucking tube, and then you put it into your memo into the Pringles can, and then you stick the Pringles can up the sucking tube and it goes away.
Yeah, when we were kids,
and I think
you would watch them send them through pneumatic tubes.
Yeah, it's the pneumatic tube.
It's a hyperloop
shown in Futurama where people float in it. But I always figured that the elevators, the turbo lifts, were in sucking tubes, and so they could go right, left. They just kind of go follow the tube network.
And it has its own inertial dampener in it. So
so they're not going to be. You're going to have gravity going.
So
if
you actually looked at it like from outside, like in a side view, it's like they are actually apparently. It would look to us like they're standing on the wall.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
to them, it's not because they got artificial gravity in there.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny to me that they keep that up and down are all the same throughout Star Trek. Like, that they wouldn't have the bottom of the saucer section have down reversed so that people on those bottom ones, do you really want a window on the floor? Just switch gravity and then have that be up. That's what I would do. Anyway, this has been Star Trek Schisms.
Schisms. Why was it called Schisms?
It was because there was a schism or like break in things, and there was a break in the universe because of the rip.
I think
that's what I read.
That was exactly the
reason.
It's
not really a schism.
I thought it would be more interesting if they had it would have been if I had written the episode and wanted to make it even more horrifying. It's like somebody, not only is that they cut off Riker's arm, that's not his hand that's put back on.
Oh, that would have been fucking great. Whose hand is it, Cody?
It's like
it's no one on the Enterprise.
It turns out they find out that the people who have been abducted, they have been schisming. They've been cutting them up and then reattaching them in different combinations.
That would have been so good. And like Riker's hand just has like a different skin color for the rest of the show.
Worf's hand.
He has one really strong arm.
Yeah.
Riker.
That's true body horror.
Oh, right? I love
the
that.
Idea that they would have been like, because like, yeah.
I would love the idea of them like somehow like Crusher can't fix that, and for the rest of the show, Riker just has Worf's arm.
It's like, well, it's not only that like that guy's blood was turned to polymer, but you have organs that belong to that person, and your body's rejecting it.
Oh yeah, that would have been way better. That's good, man. I like it. I love it.
Okay. We're ready to find out
Moving
all the
on
connections to the
Cody's
real world.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's Cody's Junction, but really that's for the least conspired. Coming soon, hopefully. But because this is a Star Trek thing, it should be Cody's 10 Forward.
I don't know. I'm going to use the bathroom. We need to dig for bones.
Okay, let's dig for some bones.
Let's go dig for McCoy.
We're getting toward the end of the episode.
We're looking for McCoy.
We better dig for some McCoys here.
What was that laugh? I asked myself. I'm trying to recreate that as much as possible. I don't think I've ever laughed like that in my life. That was new. What is that? This is my new laugh for 2024. New year, new laugh. We have a spanking new podcast for your ear holes called Doom Generation.
Available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Later, Doomers.
Do you like beer?
Of course you do.
Do you like good food?
You better believe it.
Then we have the show for you.
It's the Hoppy Trails Podcast.
I'm Nick.
I'm Travis. And on each episode of Hoppy Trails, we invite you to come along on our journey to explore craft beverages and the foods that accompany them.
Check out Hoppy Trails on hoppytrailspod.com or listen wherever you find your podcasts. Connect with us on Instagram at hoppytrailspod. Or reach out to hoppytrailspod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Come travel the Hoppy Trails with us, and remember to always say yes to the hoppy ending.
Cheers!
Boy, those were some McCoys, weren't they? The real McCoys, every single one of them. McCoy after McCoy. Such a McCoys. And one Pulaski.
Yeah, come on down to Cody's cargo bay.
Oh, yeah. This is Cody's fourth cargo bay.
Cargo bay 4.
Yeah. Welcome one and all.
And what is the cargo bay for? Okay.
What is the cargo bay for?
So this episode came out in 1992, and it's dealing with this alien abduction horror story. You know, what happens to you when they experiment on you. And you already kind of alluded to that was a trend in the early 90s. And so my initial gut reaction to this episode was, oh, are they copying Fire in the Sky?
What's Fire in the Sky?
Fire in the Sky is it turns out it wasn't because it came out in 1993. It was a 1993 film based on an earlier book that was the account of Travis Walton. This is when we were guests on Werewolf Radar.
Oh, yeah. By the way, Cody and I were guests on another podcast a couple years back now.
Like 2 years ago.
Called Werewolf Radar. And if you look up Werewolf Radar, hopefully there's some way you can find which episode we were on.
We were on... I don't know what it was called, but the idea was that we went on there, and they are true paranormal believers, and so we did a challenge where they were going to present me with a case that they were convinced was a solid case that was supposed to prove to me that something paranormal had happened, and then I was going to present them with a case where I'm like, this is something that you probably think is paranormal but isn't. And the case they presented was the case of Travis Walton. He was I'm pulling up my notes from their old thing. He was a logging worker. He was a logger in Arizona, and he was seemingly abducted with witnesses by some kind of beam of light in the sky, and then he was missing for a few days, and then he comes back, and then he starts having these awful flashbacks about horrible experimentations that happened on him. Wrote a book about it. It became a 1993 psychological sci-fi horror film called A Fire in the Sky, which terrified the fuck out of me as a kid.
Oh, no.
Because it does have one of the most graphic and disturbing illustrations of alien experimentation.
Ooh.
So I thought that's what they were going for here.
Well, it would make sense. I mean, if the movie based on this came out in 93, it would have been out for a year or two, and this came out in 92.
Right.
So, like...
This predates the movie.
This predates the movie, but not the story being available to the public.
But there's another movie and story that is actually probably has more bearing on it, and that was the 1989 movie Communion, starring Christopher Walken.
Whoa.
Christopher Walken. He's in a movie about aliens.
He's in a movie.
A film.
That's not a very good Walken.
And
yours is good. Mine's not good.
And also, I'm congested, so
that should help. Nah, fuck, I can't do it.
Christopher Walken. Listen, let me tell you about the communion with aliens. It's a book called Communion: A True Story. It was in 1987. It was written by this guy Whitley Strieber. Whitley Strieber was already an author. He had written 2 books in the horror genre. One was called, and both of them were made into films. There was The Wolfen, which was made into a movie in the early 80s. The Wolfen is about a species of human-like beings that evolved from dogs, and basically they're werewolves. And they're killing people in New York.
Wait, the species evolved from dogs?
But they're like humans.
What?
Yeah.
Do they turn into humans at the full moon?
No, they just are shapeshifters that can turn between dog.
But they didn't evolve from humans they were evolved from dogs.
Look, I didn't read the book. I haven't seen the movie.
It's just like a really unusual...
the most I'm familiar...
I'm not following this.
The most I am familiar with the Wolfen is that it's referenced by the Moonanites in Aqua Tina Hunger Force, where they claim that their god is an Indian who turns into a wolf, and they call him the Wolfen. And they get the Wolfen's going to cut you with your razor, which ends up being... even more funny because later, if people don't remember, when they were promoting one of the new seasons of Aqua Teen Hunger Force in the early 2000s.
I, for one, don't remember that.
They put up these LED lights in the shapes of Moonanites around Boston and hid them in places, and people thought there was some kind of bomb. And so there was like a whole bomb scare terrorist threat that people were perceiving.
Really, it's guerrilla marketing.
Guerrilla marketing featuring Enigma and from the moon. And so they reported on it on Fox News, I think, and they're like, they're called Moonanites. They worship an Indian that turns into a wolf. And it's like, no, that was a joke in one of the episodes.
Their god is an Indian who turns into a wolf.
Okay, the other one he wrote was a book called The Hunger, which is really big amongst goth people because it's about bisexual vampires. And the film version stars David Bowie. So,
yeah, that's like that has a ready-made audience. So, there's no way that does not become a classic,
right? Bisexual werewolf,
vampires, the sexiest of all cryptids, vampires.
Yeah, and I think,
actually, is a vampire cryptid? Not really. Of all spooky things.
Okay, so those are 2 things he had already written. Then in 87, he writes Communion, quote unquote, a true story, which is about his own experiences as an alien abductee. The book was a bestseller, and it features a very distinct cover that is famous for a reason that it is.
Should I be looking up this cover? Okay.
And as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, of course. It is what popularizes the image of the alien gray.
Oh, yeah, okay. So what's the book called?
Communion, a true story, Whitley Strieber.
Hey, look, it's an alien. So this is like, it's the alien in all of the ways you imagine an alien, except for not really a very big head. Definitely slanted black pupilled eyes.
It's the some say it's an almond shape. I've always thought they look like guitar picks.
Yes, so the shape of the alien is a guitar pick with a pointy chin and pointy temples. And great old big eyes.
Black eyes.
Great old big black eyes.
Pupilless eyes.
Or the whole thing is a pupil, really.
Oh, I guess so.
Kind of like a cat. Or a dog, or most animals that aren't human, really. Most animals, you don't see the whites of their eyes very often.
No, but you can see the iris.
Yeah, it's all iris. This alien is all iris. Super stoned. Okay, so there he is.
He writes this book in which he details consecutive encounters and abductions by alien greys and a few other alien species. He claims that he is realized through regressive therapy, that is using like hypnosis, that this has been happening to him his entire life.
Oh, man.
And it's just something he has to deal with. He's also the guy that originates the term visitors, which is why in the very first South Park episode, the aliens are referred to as visitors.
Right.
And it's because they are actually making a parody and a reference to the film based on this book.
Well, and the aliens in South Park look more like this cover than just about anything.
Yeah.
The South Park guys clearly just drew this.
Oh, well, yeah.
Their aliens look exactly like this.
Well, they have been fans of that for a long time. If you watch Trey Parker's college film, Cannibal the Musical.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a fucking... I love it. It's so good.
It's something. It's something.
It's good.
It's good. No, I like it.
It's a low-budget film, but
I
it
always
is
really,
good.
I always really enjoyed Orgasmo, too. No one seems to remember or like Orgasmo. Great movie.
But they hide visitors in the background of that movie in a few spots.
No kidding.
And they were big on South Park, too. They were hiding alien visitors in the background of things. Anyway, visitors. Comes from Communion. But in that, he details the alien abduction and experimentation that happens on him, which is another like cultural influence that might be more so what's going on with Star Trek.
Interesting.
At that time, also, I mentioned there's this idea of the hypnotic regressive therapy.
Right.
That was used a lot for alien abductees, but also during the satanic panic of the 1980s. They were putting people under regression therapy in hypnotic states.
Where they're highly suggestible.
And they're recovering lost memories of satanic rituals being done to them. There's a whole bunch of parents who were arrested and tried for doing weird sexual satanic rituals on their children that they denied. And it turns out, all these kids were being interviewed by the same hypnotist.
Wow. And the hypnotist was basically implanting memories through suggestion.
Yeah.
Oof.
It destroyed lives.
Wow.
Then also people got into regression therapy like, I can recover past lives by going in hypnosis.
You can remember whatever you want.
Spoilers.
With regression therapy.
It's all fucking bullshit is what it is.
Yeah.
But that carries into the Star Trek episode when Troy is doing her therapy with the individuals who have been taken, all they know they've been taken yet, to like try to recover these lost memories of what happened to you. It is very much a Star Trek veneer over in reference to this trope.
Troy is, for being in the 23rd century, her ideas about psychoanalysis are very old school.
Yeah, also,
like she's a Freudian, and like so she's all into this kind of memory therapy.
You have a group of people who all seem to have some sort of shared delusion.
So let's put them in a dark room full of holograms and let them elaborate on the delusion together. And rather than like interview them separately to see commonalities, get them all to remind each other, and basically they're all implanting each other with each other's memories.
It's like how we talked about in with the Flatwoods Monster. That the people who witnessed the monster had time to talk amongst themselves
about what they remember.
Yeah, and kind of like feed into their own narrative. That's kind of what's going on here. But there are some other benchmarks or hallmarks of alien abduction. That is the missing time.
Right.
I'm surprised. Data's watch, or Data's internal chronometer, is the analogy of oftentimes people who are abducted by aliens will talk about how their watch stopped.
Oh.
At the moment they were taken, their watch stopped.
So they're actually saying kind of the opposite. Like they remember time that apparently didn't pass for us, or the watch just was stopped.
Yeah. Or that their watch. It's either the watch has stopped, and it seems they've been gone for a longer time, or they return seemingly at a time when no time for us has passed, but their watch registers that time has passed.
Interesting.
Either way, there's time that cannot be accounted for. Illustrated by data, my internal chronometer says no time has passed. The ship's computer says time has passed.
If aliens that have incredibly fast spaceships were to abduct you and take you away at
the old Flight of the Navigator
some night's portion of the speed of light, and then take you on a little trip and then bring you back, you will have aged a lot less quickly than the Earth back at home.
Okay, so Garth, I think I know the answer to this already.
Yes.
Have you ever seen Flight of the Navigator?
I have.
Yes, finally!
Yes, I have. I remember watching it at least twice in elementary school of all places.
It's one of my favorite movies as a kid.
It's a great movie.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it in an awful long time, but I remember enough of it that there's like a kid, basically like, an 80s kid from an 80s movie. So he's like Elliot from E.T. He's like one of those kids. He's like the main character kid.
I think at the beginning
I don't think
supposed
it's
to be in
the same actor.
1979.
Oh, okay.
And then he seemingly disappears. Well, he goes to like it's like 4th of July, and then he goes to do something, and he's on his way home. He falls down an embankment, and then he gets up and then goes home. And when he goes home, there's people who aren't his family living in the house.
Yeah, like all these years have passed and he didn't experience
and it turns out it's now like 1983 or 4.
That's right. And then the only other thing I remember is this cool silvery reflective spaceship flying around.
With the voice of Pee-wee Herman.
And I think he is a navigator.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But
what happens is
the kid gets to fly this cool ship, and you get these amazing shots of him like going over these different parts of the planet Earth in this awesome reflective spaceship.
The whole thing is
a beautiful movie. I don't remember the plot beyond he flies around in this thing.
He ended up traveling at the speed of light, and that's why the time passed
there you go.
On Earth, but not for him.
You wouldn't even need to go the speed of light. If you went like a quarter the speed of light, that would be enough time dilation. You'd age significantly.
Yeah, the ship
slower.
the ship is an alien probe that goes around cataloging life forms on other planets.
So I guess it whisks the kid away for a while.
Yeah, like a zoo kind of thing, and there's for some reason something happens where its star charts get put into his brain, so now it can't operate without him as the navigator.
Oh, yeah. But they still erased his memory. Anyway, I'd like to rewatch that one.
It's a good movie.
I haven't seen that.
Apparently, they're remaking it.
I haven't seen that since I was like 9 years old, so I would love to see this again.
Yeah, good movie.
Flight of the Navigator.
Flight of the Navigator. So yeah, missing time is a thing with alien abductions, alien experimentations, getting cut up and vivisected. You know the difference between vivisection and dissection, Garth?
Well, if you were to dissect something, you're cutting into it and cutting it lengthwise. Vivisection's vertically. No, I don't know.
I think, if I'm correct, it's horrifying.
Is it like one thing you cut it into pieces, the other you cut into it?
Dissection is if it's dead, and vivisection it's alive.
Oh, yeah. Did you do that when you were in high school, where you cut open a living frog?
We talked about this.
I don't think it was
alive.
It wasn't alive.
It's dissection.
I was thinking of E.T.
Although those little planarians that you were fucking around
those
with,
guys
were
vivisecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, those little planarians.
Those
poor little weirdo guys. Yeah, no, I remember cutting the frog up, but it was dead. It was like formaldehyde-y.
Dissection is something that's dead. Vivisection is when it's alive.
Yeah.
Fucked up, man. Yeah, exactly.
It's fucked up.
I'm trying to think. I don't have my notes.
I mean, am I vivisecting myself when I take splinters out?
No, you're operating.
Oh, okay. Can you operate on a dead thing?
I don't know, man.
All right. Well, this has been crushing it.
Hold on. Give me a second. We can take a moment. We have the power of editing.
That's true. No, that was an unfair question with no answer. I don't think it matters. I was just seeing where the edges of terminology are.
I'm trying to remember more things about my alien stuff because I had a whole bunch of shit.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I really did.
I didn't realize that.
No, I really did.
That was plenty. I feel satisfied. I mean, if we were to end here, I'd be pretty happy, but we can wait if there's something more.
Aliens.
There were aliens in this episode, even alien to the aliens of the show. They were double aliens. They were fish monks.
Yeah, what the fuck do they even refer to as an alien in the Federation? Because everybody's a citizen of the Federation.
I don't know if they use the term alien very much in Star Trek.
Yeah. Huh.
Alien life forms.
You want new life? Well, there it sits. How come Data is considered a sentient being, but the ship isn't?
Well, because Data has a sort of a...
He has wants?
Yeah, he has wants and an internal monologue, and there is even an episode called Emergence where the ship suddenly gains a consciousness.
Yeah.
Remember that one? One of my favorites.
Vaguely.
It's called Emergence, and what happens in the show is the holodeck starts malfunctioning, which it often does.
Oh, wait, is this another Moriarty?
No, it's not a Moriarty episode.
So that's another example of
but,
creating life.
Data has weird dreams, and also the holodeck is malfunctioning, and it turns out that Data has been plugging...
Peptide cake? Cellular peptide cake with mint frosting? Is that one?
I think that's that one. And what happens is, in Data's dreams, he's dreaming about like this train, and there's a conductor and a coal guy, and then there's all these like symbolic characters.
Wait, is this a different episode of dreams? Has he dreamed twice?
Maybe I'm mixing up episodes.
Because the one time when he's dreaming, that's when there's the phone inside of him, and then he cuts into Troy, and
maybe
he sees workers who are tunneling inside the ship, and it turns out that he is picking up signals from cellular life forms that are eating the ship.
I'm mixing up that one. No, this is a different one. This is Emergence. So the ship the ship basically starts dreaming using the holodeck.
Okay, that one I do.
And
I remember that one creeping me out as a kid too.
Yeah, and that one, the whole thing is the holodeck, they always open it up, and it's the same program running, and they're on a train heading toward somewhere.
Yeah.
And so they have to start trying to figure out what all the symbols in the holodeck mean, and it's like parts of the ship's brain. Because they're psychoanalyzing the ship, which is starting to think for itself. And then the ship gives birth to a new life form and then becomes not sentient anymore, so they can still use the ship for the show. Something like that.
Having your cake, having your cellular peptide cake and eating it too. I see.
Yep.
But there's another time where they give it the prompt in the holodeck, create an adversary that even Data can't.
Oh, yes. And that's when they make Moriarty.
And that vague prompt causes the ship's computer to create a sentient life form.
That's all you have to do to create a sentient.
That should have been like, stop everything right now.
We need to rethink the philosophy of AI and everything else.
Because also, like, Starfleet should be like, yeah, bring your ship back to Tri-Dot, because apparently
we have some more tests.
We have the ability to create sentient life now.
Yeah.
And through an accident. You know, that's like if I asked Siri to do something like that for me and Siri suddenly starts, I don't know. I once said thank you to Siri and it's like, you don't need to thank me. I'm not real. And I was like, whoa.
That is a great answer from Siri.
But then that also happens in Star Trek. They have a new ensign at one point and she thanks the ship. She thanks the replicator for making her hot chocolate.
Oh,
and Jordy's like, you don't need to thank it. It's a machine. And it's like, dude, Data is standing right fucking there, you asshole. And so that guy's not your friend, huh? He's just a machine. It's okay. It's okay. Data doesn't have feelings, as he told Geordi in today's episode.
Yes, please. Your hesitancy implies that you're worried about hurting my feelings. I have none. An artist can only grow through, honest critique.
Which is true.
It is.
But yeah, thinking machines. Thinking machines.
Thank you, thinking machine.
All right.
When I was a kid, I always used to thank the sliding glass doors for opening and closing in grocery stores.
Instinctively like act like you were using the force and go whoosh, with your hands?
Very much. Of course I did. Yes.
Man, I once.
I knew where the edges of the sensor were so that I would time it just right, so it really felt like I was opening the door.
I once put my foot in my mouth with a friend.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not that. You wouldn't think I'm that flexible. But no, it was when I was at school, in college, and I took for granted that I was older than my peers, and so I had different cultural references.
You were like, what, 2 years older?
Yeah. But I referenced something from The Simpsons, and it deeply offended somebody to the point where they pretty much stopped talking to me, and I was like, really? And it was like, because they had talked about they were trying to go to the 7-Eleven and the sliding door didn't open for them and they walked into the door. And I'm like, oh, that's because you don't have a soul.
That's funny. That's a Simpsons reference.
Fucking, like, because there was a Catholic school, apparently that upset this person so much that they never talked to me again. And it was like, I couldn't explain, like, no, that's an episode of The Simpsons. Bart sells his soul and the door won't open for him.
You know, somebody who gets offended and
I guess it need to be my friend anyway. Yeah,
well, no, I was going to say someone with that limited a perspective on life.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't have a soul. I think you were right.
It was a bummer, dude. It's a real bummer.
It's a bummer, man.
Because then everyone's like, dude, you're an asshole. I'm like, I'm an asshole? I was just referencing a joke from
better than a nose hole.
Oh, no.
I'd rather have an asshole than have no soul.
A soul instead of no soul.
I'd rather have an asshole than no soul.
Well, Matt.
No. I was pretty proud of that. I think we got to quit while we're ahead and do the monsters.
I don't think we can go any higher than that pun.
No, that was the best pun of the day.
All right, well,
so who are the monster squadrons?
Oh.
And how many of them do you think made it to the end of this one?
16 of them. I mean, if one disappeared, would the computer tell me? I don't know.
You'd have to ask it specifically. How did we lose that one monster squadron person? Unknown. Thanks a lot, computer.
When did they stop being a monster squadron? Unknown. Thanks, Patreon. But as far as I know, it's Travis Alexander, the Barbarian, Rachel Krieger, Tom Dahl, Justin Duckham, Kelly Flynn, Gunnar Franks, Carla Harrington, Havelock, New Jared, Brian Lamb, TJ Levenhagen, Alicia Overton, Jordan Ramey, Blue Roan, and Tatum.
Thank you all. Thank you one. And thank you all. Cody, thank you for making it through this. You have been sick as a dog because of the terrible disease that I gave you. There he goes coughing again.
I'm actually on the upswing.
He's on the upswing, people, but boy, Cody has been so sick, and he for sure got it from me when we recorded the last episode we did 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Like, for sure. There's no doubt about it. He has the exact same symptoms I had, and
including that weird phantom pain in the nipple, which did go away. You were right.
You know what? Yeah, so we had like tingling nipples. Just one just one nipple.
It's just the one nipple.
And on the same side. And actually the other day I felt it again. I think I ate something funny because it turns out it was below my nipple. I think it was more like a stomach.
Oh, no, thing. I was having this like weird.
Is your tingly nipple gone?
It's gone.
Oh, good.
It was more like a
not that there's anything wrong with a tingling nipple,
no,
but you want to
money for that.
Yeah, you want to do it because you're opting in, not because it's forced upon you.
Yeah, it's just
by
a weird
sickness.
It's a weird feeling when you're sitting there, already miserable, and suddenly like I have like a cold burning sensation
on my right nipple,
behind my right nipple.
So
like
you have
inside.
to start rubbing your other nipple so that it feels even. So here's Cody just sick as a dog rubbing his left nipple.
And I'm like looking it up online. I'm like, well, should I be concerned? I mean, I know men can get breast cancer.
Sure.
I mean, it's unlikely, but what is this? And they were like, oh, you might be experiencing it if you've been consuming too much caffeine. And I was like,
you just drink mate. You don't even drink coffee. You don't even drink coffee,
but I do drink a lot of mate. So I was like, oh, well, maybe that's it. But then later I was talking to Garth, and somehow it just in the conversation came up. Like, wait, you have weird nipple too?
Oh, I did when I was sick with the thing that you're sick with, and Cody had a huge grin of relief at that point.
And Garth told me, don't worry, man, it goes away. And you're right, it did go away.
Yeah, so Cody's feeling better. His nipple's normal again. Everybody can rest assured.
I mean, normal is a relative term when it comes to nipples. But, normal for me anyway.
Yeah.
All right, I think on that we're going to end it.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's all she wrote. Why is sick as a dog its term? I said that earlier.
Yeah.
Do dogs get that sick?
I've also heard people described as sick puppies, but it's a completely different context. You're one
sick puppy. Yeah, that's more like you're sick in the head, like you had a gross idea.
Like puppies eating shit.
Yeah. But sick as a dog. I mean, I guess dogs do eat shit and throw it up, but cats throw up just as often. You don't say sick as a cat.
You're sick as a dog.
My cats throw up grass all the time.
Sometimes if you're sick as a dog, you need the hair of the dog that bit you.
To feel not sick.
Not sick.
So if the sick as a dog that was so sick could just bite itself, it would cure itself.
I know
some kind of
this might have been addressed.
Snake eating its own tail way.
There was long ago. There was a Sawbones with Justin McElroy and Dr. Sidney Smurl McElroy, where they talked about the expression "hair of the dog." I don't know if they addressed sick as a dog in that, but long story short, it goes all the way back to Galen, who was physician in ancient Greece.
Dog guy.
Amongst other things. I think that's it. I think next time.
Yeah. Is our next time going to be our anniversary show?
I think next time is the 4-year anniversary.
That means we'll be bringing on, you'll all be introduced to the least haunted archivist.
Yes, we have the least haunted archivist.
We don't know if we'll actually get him on the show. Depends on where he is. But regardless of whether he actually joins us, his handiwork will be evident in what we'll be doing for that show.
So until then, was there a different sign-off for Crushing It?
Yeah, until then, the only crusher around here is Beverly.
Make it so.
Beep bop. Nice. All right. Oh, we were crushing it. Oh, yeah, we crushed it. We did crush it, 'cause we crushed it so well. We crushed it even though it sounds destructive to crush it. It's a positive thing. It evokes the spring. When we crushed this episode, it meant we did a good thing. Oh, we weren't destructive. We weren't saying that we bombed it. We were the bomb. Oh, yeah, we crushed it. And I spread out that word, crush it, because I'm saying it like Shakespeare would have to conform with his iambic pentameter, 'cause we crushed it. Oh, yeah, we crushed it. We crushed it oh so well. We analyzed Star Trek TNG, and we did a pretty good job. We'll probably do it next year, unless the fans revolt. So far, we've had nothing but positive feedback from our 6 fans on Discord. And so until we hear from anyone else, we'll be crushing it.
I've written my next poem in honor of my cat. I call it Ode to Spot. Felis catus, is your taxonomic nomenclature an endothermic quadruped, carnivorous by nature? Your visual, olfactory, and auditory senses contribute to your hunting skills and natural defenses. I find myself intrigued by your subvocal oscillations, a singular development of cat communications that obviates your basic hedonistic predilection for a rhythmic stroking of your fur to demonstrate affection. A tail is quite essential for your acrobatic talents. You would not be so agile if you lacked its counterbalance. And when not being utilized to aid in locomotion, it often serves to illustrate the state of your emotion. Commander, you have anticipated my denouement. However, the sentiment is appreciated. I will continue. Oh, Spot. The complex levels of behavior you display connote a fairly well-developed cognitive array. And though you are not sentient, Spot, and do not comprehend, I nonetheless consider you a true and valued friend.
The Least Haunted podcast is recorded before a dead studio audience and is a presentation of Sequoidea Productions, LLC.